Good day and welcome to this Corporate Access with me, Zanele Morrison. On a global scale, small and medium-sized businesses are central for economic and social growth because they enable job creation and really our economies depend on it. They account for 90% of businesses and 50% of gross domestic contribution, and this is according to the United Nations. And yet we still face many challenges, and on top of that, of those challenges is financial inclusion, a digital transformation, and at times access to technology. So Visa has embarked on a journey, and joining me from Dubai to go into more detail is Andrew Torre. He's the regional president for Central and Eastern Europe and Middle East as well, and Africa at Visa. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me once again. Let's refresh ourselves on what it is that you are doing for small and medium-sized businesses around the world to drive change and create financial inclusion.
In short, we're doing a lot. We're committed to providing inclusion and access to the digital economy to consumers and small businesses that are not included today. And across the African continent, you gave some good stats. Across the African continent, there are about 400 million consumers who are still excluded, and 40 million small and micro businesses that we know about. Frankly, having access, financial inclusion and access to the digital economy are absolutely critical. If you look at the digital economy today, or by the end of 2025, in Africa, it's estimated to be about $180 billion worth of economic value. And over the next 25 years, it's expected to grow to over $700 billion of value, and will almost double the amount of GDP it occupies in the population. So it's critical to get consumers and small businesses to be able to have the tools, technology, and access, as you were talking about, to the digital economy. Frankly, at Visa, we are absolutely committed to uplifting everyone everywhere to be by being the best way to pay and be paid. And part of that is certainly to bring small and micro businesses into the formal economy. And we have done a lot of work, and there's still more work to do. In 2020, we had an initiative to work with our partners to digitally enable small and micro businesses across the globe. We had a target of 50 million. We're at 67 million, but you can see by those numbers, there's still a lot more to do. There's more to do around connectivity. You talked about mobile phones, even though it's doubled in the last couple of years. There's still not enough people with connectivity. There's still not enough people with internet penetration, although it's up in the last 10 years from about 10% to 40%. And then there's the financial inclusion. And, we talked a little about, but the last time we talked about fintech. So getting access, being able to meet customers where they are. So there's a lot of work happening, but there's still a lot more to be done.
And a lot of access and a lot of work still needs to be done to enable that access. But maybe you can just break down what some of those challenges are, because that's where you find your opportunities, right? So basic, when it comes to mobile utilization, internet, are there still challenges there?
There are. The internet penetration is 40%, for example. And if you're going to have access to the digital economy, it has to be 100% penetration. The same with the device. So those are really, really important. And if we just go back to small businesses, there are real challenges there as well. Not just small businesses, but women-owned small businesses is something that, we spend a lot of time thinking about. And it's not a level playing field there. There's not enough equity. There are social norms, cultural norms, and then there's access to capital, which is a huge barrier to women-owned businesses. Some of the stats I've seen on, self-employed women-owned businesses, they're about 58% of all self-employed businesses in Africa are women-owned, and they account for 13% of GDP. But when you look at the outcomes in Africa, if you're a male-led business, you have on average 6 times more capital than have access to capital than a women-led business. So at Visa, we spend a lot of time, working with partners and thinking about how we can address this. We have an equitable access initiative that we've done globally through our Visa Foundation, and we've made some investments in grants in Africa as well to support it with AfriLabs and the Grasa Machel Trust. where Afrolabs works. It's a tech hub innovation center that really focuses on gender. And we know, for example, if men have 6 times more access to capital, venture capital funding for women-owned startups is only 1%. So that's a huge barrier. And we're using some of our grants to be able to, really create the right environment to be able to get women-led businesses funded, because capital is absolutely critical.
And you are at the forefront of defining and unpacking realistically what it means to have social impact and purpose. Could you share that with us from a Visa perspective? How are you ensuring that what you are doing translates ultimately to exactly that, impact and purpose?
Yeah, it's a great question, and where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is the impact we have on the ground day to day with entrepreneurs and small and micro businesses. We have a global platform called She's Next, where we work with women-owned businesses. We do it across the globe. We certainly have done it in the African economies as well. I'll give you a really good example. And when I'm fortunate enough to go into markets, I often meet with some of these entrepreneurs to really test, are we addressing the needs that they have? And I'll give you a couple of examples here. One is with a company called Naoli. Naoli is led by a woman named Miriam, and she had the idea of creating a marketplace for Moroccan handicrafts, so folks that make these handicrafts. And it was the idea of, there's so much opportunity for these handicraft sellers to be able to sell online rather than just if they're in, a stall in Fez or Marrakesh or one of Morocco's other cities. By the way, it's about 2.5 million people in Morocco actually are producing handicrafts. 80% are women, and it's about 7% of the economy. And what she realized is to be able to, and it certainly helped during the pandemic, but to be able to not just allow them to sell to people that walk into their stalls, but actually to people around the globe. So she created this marketplace, and it's had real impact. Another good example of a founder and a small startup that really is changing the face of agriculture in Africa is a company called Thrive Agric. And there's an amazing entrepreneur who started that company, Ayo Arikawe. And what he realized was the fact that in Nigeria, where he sits, it's about 20% of the economic output is based on small farmers. Yet at these 30 million small farmers that do this every day, from when they plant their crops to they harvest, they end up just as poor at the end of that process. So complicated, intractable problem, and he's really worked to help solve that through 3 things, really. The first one is, providing an operating system for these small farmers with digital tools and technology to be able to help them understand when to plant, where to plant, how to plant. Also, that then provides access for them to get capital. And then they've created these warehouses where these farmers can go and actually sell their goods to capture more of the value. So those are just a couple of stories of on the ground entrepreneurs solving real problems and making an impact.
And have you covered all of them? Because you spoke of Ayo, Mariam, Zarina, and you've also touched on your platform, which provides such incredible access and tools for them. So who else is front of mind for you when you create these type of platforms that really is shooting out and showing us what is possible?
Yeah, I think, top of mind, entrepreneurs have, diverse and incredible sets of needs, but, we've talked about there are these challenges, access to capital, inclusion, both of those entrepreneurs, I think, are emblematic of if you bring someone in who looks at the problem differently. And, the last time I was on CNBC Africa was about a month ago when we talked about our FinTech Africa Accelerator. And I think the other things we have that we're going to continue to do that are critically important in driving impact and really working with small entrepreneurs to solve problems are our innovation center. So we have an innovation center in Nairobi that certainly works across the continent, which is where I was when we last had the conversation. And then also working with lots of fintechs. And if you think about it, the way we're going to solve problems is not just digitizing existing processes that are analog today, but making them better, finding the pain points and addressing them. So us understanding fintechs and working with fintechs, but really these fintechs that are solving problems on the ground is what really matters. So we continue to invest in supporting fintechs with our Visa Everywhere initiative. Thrive Agric was the global winner of the Visa Everywhere initiative, and they came with a real problem that they saw and a real solution to it. So that is something we're going to continue to work on and invest in to make sure problems are solved locally to meet the needs of consumers and small businesses to kind of really drive this change.
And a final question, and a really simple question, is access. Access is not just the technical access we can see, but the ability to understand what, for example, Visa is offering. Have you encountered or found that you've had to adjust to make yourself accessible as well as agile, because the continent is so different? Every country is just so different from the other. How have you handled that very loose dynamic that can enable or block access?
Yeah, so we've responded in multiple ways. One, we are opening more offices, putting more people on the ground. And when we hire local people in local markets. We've continued to take our global platforms. So our global innovation centers, we've put them on the ground. We've put one on the ground in Kenya. We've run this FinTech Accelerator program to really help the next generation of FinTechs think about solving these problems. We continue to roll out our She's Next program for female entrepreneurs, where we provide grants, but it's also a spotlight to bring women entrepreneurs together, allow them to network and mentor each other. And I think there's lots of these small things that we do locally in market after market that really start to drive the change. It also provides a really good feedback loop for us to be able to know what we can do from our global assets, but also our local partners to help support this.
So it's really quite a test case, I think, for anybody who wants to work in the continent. It's localize and then be agile and customize and really understand the core of the problem. Andrew, it's always amazing to connect with you. I think I waited too long. Let's make it sooner than another year. But thank you so much for your time today. That's where we'll park the conversation for now. And I want to thank my guest, Andrew Torre, Regional President for Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa at Visa, joining us from Dubai, talking us through Visa's journey in supporting small businesses to be part of the global community. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for staying with us until next time.